So the primary substance, which is incredibly it turns on your immune system, immune modulating, is the fancy medical statement, is gluten. So now gluten is not one protein. It turns out, I thought it was, but my reading, it turns out to be a complex of proteins which occur mainly in certain grains. They occur in wheat, barley, and rye. Wheat, barley, and rye. This group of proteins. And the crunch with them is that when you eat these grains which contain gluten, the gluten is only partially digested. And I'm sorry, I'll just say that that wheat and gluten-containing substances have crept massively into the food chain. Firstly, because you've got like millions and millions and millions of square miles and somewhere in the flat middle bits of America and in lots of other places where wheat is grown as a huge uni crop, and you have these huge combined harvesters roaring along, and says wheat is as high as an elephant's eye, as far as the eye can see. So there's bread, there's pasta, which was previously just a little delicacy in Italy, now it's worldwide. And there is the most significant, it's a cheap filler for all processed foods. So wheat is protein. Protein is good for you, got to be, but it's not. And the protein, the mixture of proteins that make up gluten appear in just about all processed food because it bulks it up, it's tasty, and it's cheap. And there's nutritious value because it's a protein. So you find gluten in all, just, you go in the supermarket and you walk down, anything that's packaged, it's got gluten in it, unless it specifically says gluten-free. So what happens is the gluten, you eat it, and then it's in a certain group of people, the gluten is partially digested. And what happens is that the gluten itself, now, I'm just going to talk this, we're in a huge controversial area now with gluten, but what happens is the gluten will, the undigested gluten will stimulate the immune system in the gut. And remember, 70% of the immune cells live around the gut. It will stimulate it, and you will get an inflammatory autoimmune reaction. So your immune system will react against the gluten, and then it's got a job. Wow, I've just finished the gluten, but hang on, there's this cell and that cell and that cell. So your immune system will fight you. Now, so that's an autoimmune disease, which falls into this big group of autoimmune diseases: rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and so on and so on and so on. All these awful diseases where you attack. Multiple sclerosis is another autoimmune disease where your immune system will attack some part of your body because it gets turned on, sometimes by stuff we don't know, but in terms of gluten in the gut, it gets turned on when the undigested gluten starts moving through your gut. Your immune system is turned on, and it attacks your gut, so that when you take a sample of the gut wall, normally the gut wall, someone described it as, looks like a thick pile carpet. So you have what are called villi, which are these little finger-like projections that come out of the gut. And these villi, actually, your gut, your small gut is 22 foot long, the large gut is maybe 3 or 4 foot long, but the surface area of the gut is acres because of these little villi. They hugely increase this absorptive capacity of the gut. But people who have true celiac disease, or true what's called gluten enteropathy, is that it looks like somebody's come with a lawnmower and shaved off all those little villi, and it's flat. So it changes it from a thick pile carpet to a tile floor. And therefore, the people who have this true autoimmune disease against gluten will not be able to absorb food. And so there'll be and people who have this disease will have a true malabsorption syndrome. They'll be lacking in certain basic vitamins, as though they lived somewhere in Africa where they're not getting they'll actually lack vitamins. They'll lose weight, they'll become anemic, they get osteoporosis, they get skin rashes, and they have pain, awful pain. The autoimmune condition attacks joints. They may often end up with widespread pain, as in fibromyalgia. So this condition, which is genetic, in other words, passed down through the generations, it's in your genes, where you cannot actually break down gluten, and therefore your immune system goes crazy, damages your gut, and you end up, this is the hard end, or it's kind of, when I say it's the one end of a huge spectrum of what occurs in people. So there is this well designated, you can do blood tests which show these autoimmune, antibodies circulating around in your bloodstream, which are there attacking here and there. And for these people, if you completely remove all gluten from the diet, they are transformed. Their life is transformed, and they just wake up. They've stopped being poisoned by the substance, by this mixture of proteins. Then there's a whole other group, and this is where it gets very, very messy, which are people who have perhaps a little bit of sensitivity to gluten, but don't have all the antibodies, don't have the damage that you can see when you take a biopsy and so on. And this group of people turn out to be much, much larger. Many, I'm not even sure of the proportion, maybe as much as 20% of the population has some degree of food sensitivity. And it's very controversial as to what that is. Is that an autoimmune condition? Is it something else? And into this mix, some people, when you remove gluten from their diet, feel a bit better, or feel quite a lot better, because the particles of the bits of gluten that are not absorbed also may leak through the gut and appear in other places. And so you may get a low-grade autoimmune condition, but it's nothing like this incredibly well designated, where there's antibodies and so on. It's just a kind of low-grade thing.